Hi there, viewers. I want to speak to you about getting a job. And so this might apply to a younger audience, or you might be struggling even if you're a little bit older trying to get a job. And I may make more than one video on this topic because I have a lot to say about it. I've been working a long time. If you can see my gray hair, um, I'm a senior citizen and I still enjoy working. And I had to get a job when I came to Hungary, where I live now, in order to stay here as a permanent resident. So I have a lot of stories to tell about myself and maybe a couple about my husband and our long career history. And so, when you fill out your resume, they tell you to start with your most recent job and work your way backwards. So I'll just tell you, we came here. And the first thing our lawyer told us was if you want to stay, you're going to have some kind of business. Well, I'm a personal assistant and a bookkeeper, but I couldn't do those things in a foreign country where I don't understand the laws or the rules. But some years earlier, I had helped a person go through English college when they didn't speak English very well in another country. We worked together on Zoom, and it was engineering English and professional business words. And my friend got his degree. So when this topic came up, I said I could teach English. I don't have a degree in teaching English, but I have a lot of experience. Plus, I had traveled around the world as a child, so I communicated in other languages and I understood how to speak in a basic way. So if people are struggling, how we can understand each other and work on proficiency, increasing vocabulary, all the things you need to do to speak better English. And many of the people I'm helping currently, because we did start that business, we call it Dovetail Office Consulting KFT, and that's like a limited partnership with me and my husband. And not only do we teach English, and he will converse, it's conversational English most of the time if people come to our home, but also I do it on Zoom and we talk about things that people are interested in. We talk about cooking sometimes. My husband's a retired chef. He's also a crafter, and we talk about how he makes his artwork and my experiences with all my travels. So we have a lot of topics that we can talk about and engage people and ask, what are your hobbies? What are you interested in? What kind of words do you need to know to help your career path, if that's what they're interested in, or your travel plans, if travel is your hobby? So that's what we're doing right now. But we didn't start out that way. So I started out as a teenager studying an academic course of study. That meant I was going to go to college and learn how to speak another language and read a lot of books. And there was nothing in my curriculum, well, except one thing that could help me in my career path. And I always wanted to work. My parents didn't want me to, but I wanted to. So in my senior year of my academics, my guidance counselor said, take drafting. We're trying to get women doing drafting, and it's usually the guys, but we want to get some women doing this. And you're going to take some art classes, so you need to know how to use the equipment and the basic skills of drawing. So I took his recommendation, and later I would get a job and a career as a draftsman. Who knew? He was a wise guidance counselor. So I was one of four women that did that. Um, so anyway, my first big job I got was with the telephone company when it was all one company. And the test they gave you had to do with hearing or seeing a list of numbers and copying them down correctly. And I was able to pass that test and get to be a long distance telephone operator. Well, that was a very regimented, and I didn't really enjoy it. So after a while, I tried to get other jobs. And you had to go to their head office and be interviewed by their HR people. And I heard there was an opening in the business office, which is very structured, but it pays good. I went to the interview, and the lady had a white piece of paper with a box on it. and she wanted me to fill in the box with all the things I had done. Were you a cheerleader? No. Did you play sports? No. I couldn't fill in that box, and I was too young to think outside the box. I never had an opportunity to tell this lady I had traveled all over the world as a child and been exposed to a lot of cultures and languages. That wasn't one of her questions, and so I didn't know that I needed to tell my own story. I just tried to fill in her box. So I didn't get that job. However, later there was an event where you could volunteer and help sell some things for charity. And I volunteered and I was really having fun and talking to this other lady. And we didn't say what we did in the phone company, just that we were having fun. Found out later she was the head of the engineering department and they had drafting people there. Well, I landed a better job than the business office, quite by accident, or maybe by God's providence, I think. So I worked for the telephone company for 13 years, and then it was splitting up, and that was not a happy time. So I left and went to a civil engineering company, and I ended up over time working for 8 engineers, and they taught me higher math. They were just wonderful people to work for and with, and they're very detail oriented. So I really loved that job. But after a while, I needed to make a change, and I transitioned to being a bookkeeper and because of my eyesight and some other issues that were happening. And so I did that, and I had to kind of start over a little bit. And then I lost that job, and a friend of mine's husband was a lawyer, and he heard I was in between jobs, and he needed a phone receptionist for a short period of time. So I said, okay. Well, I went there, and I wasn't there but a week or two when one of his former partners lost another secretary. That man couldn't get along with anyone. But I saw an opportunity, and he needed help. And I was a paralegal for several years. And then I had an opportunity. And as a paralegal, you also do bookkeeping. So I learned more bookkeeping skills and I learned how to do estate accountings. So I had lots of on the job training. So then I got hired by a museum to be the assistant to the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer. And she took me to accounting school for computer accounting. So I really got a good education there. And all the while, I'm being paid and educated at the same time. So this was a real blessing for me. I worked there for 4 years. Then I needed another job, and I started looking in the newspapers anywhere that had an advertisement. We didn't use the internet quite as much then. And I saw an anonymous advertisement. It said Family Farm needs an office manager. What fun that would be to work on a farm. I thought, well, it really wasn't a farm. It was a very big estate owned by a celebrity, and they wanted to be anonymous. So that's why they worded the ad that way and called me on the phone and asked me my credentials and happened to be I knew the wife's uh, one of my relatives had gone to school with this man's wife. And so they invited me out, and I got that job, and I worked for a famous celebrity who was retired. And I learned a whole lot of things working for him because anything they needed to be done, their office manager took care of it. She took all the phone calls. She did everything, managed the property, hired the vendors, if something needed to be fixed. And one day they called me up and they said they wanted to take a big boat trip on a really large yacht. And I needed to rent the yacht and rent the plane and rent the car. And so I just learned how to do all kinds of crazy things working for them. And it was kind of fun, but it's also a little stressful. So after a few years, I decided I needed to do something different. And I had a couple of small jobs. And then I saw another ad in the paper, and it says they need an office manager to a business person, needs to be able to do currency conversion. I'd done that as a child in other countries. So I know all you need is a spreadsheet and what's the rate. And that really didn't faze me any. And I'm sure some people were scared when they saw that part in the ad. So I applied. Sure enough, I got a phone call and I didn't recognize the person's name until we were in the interview. And then I realized that I was talking to the grandson of the founder of a very large company. And he was an extremely wealthy person. and I worked for him for a couple of years. And then my father passed away. Well, during all this time, I had in my heart that I wanted to be my own boss. And I wanted to go help elderly people in their homes with their paperwork because that's what I had done at the law office. And now was my opportunity because my dad left me a little money. So I started my own business. I had no idea how to run my own business. I didn't know how to get the word out, market it. So I went to marketing meetings and I educated myself. And at first, I didn't make hardly any money at all. So I got a part-time job doing home health care to just get out there and do something while I was working toward building this company. And I became pretty successful as word of mouth got out, and some of my relatives and friends and relatives of relatives of friends needed help with their elderly family members. And then I found there were young people who also needed help managing their offices. I became quite successful at it. So that's what I did the whole time I was in the US. And I was invited also to take minutes of meetings because I had a skill from being a legal assistant. So I developed all these skills and my career path. And then my husband and I decided to make this very big move. And that's how I came to be where I am today and have an understanding of what to put on a resume, or what we call in Europe a CV, curriculum vitae, and how to have a successful job interview, and also how to have some interview fails. And I'll share a few of those because, well, one of them is particularly funny to me. Um, I was really anxious to get one drafting job because I work for more than one company. And I went to the interview ill. Not a good idea. And I had a sinus infection, and I took a lot of medicine for my sinus infection. And so I was all spaced out. I'm sure they thought I was some sort of a drug addict because I couldn't sit up straight in the chair. So that's one of my things is don't go to an interview ill. Postpone it if you can. Do you feel better? Um, and anyway, this is sort of my story. And my husband is a chef who always worked in restaurants. And I don't have time to go into the long of his story now. But one funny thing that happened to him, he got an ad to work at a very large federal company, the Federal Reserve. And in Virginia, that's where they actually print the dollar bills. It's one of the places they do that. And the head of that organization there happened to be a member of a church that we went to. It's in a rural area, and he had a big piece of property in this little country area. And he was just Jimmy to us. But at the office, he was in the high rise. We call it the ivory tower, being up in the very top of the building. He could actually speak to the president of the United States if he wanted to, but we just knew him on a first name friendly basis. He would invite the whole church to his home for parties because it was a small group of people and we'd picnic. And so he was just a good old boy to us, but not there. So my husband gets this job interview and he's all excited, and it's him and this other guy, and they're touring this big building and riding around the elevator, and it's a 6 or 7 floor building. And he wants to be one of the chefs or under chef in this place because they had a large cafeteria. Well, they all get on the elevator, and it's a large elevator with a bunch of people on it, and here comes our friend. And everyone is going, "Good morning, Mr. M." I'm not going to tell you his full name, but except and he's acknowledging all those people, and they're all almost in unison. "Good morning, Mr. M." Like he's somebody so special that they can't say anything else. And he looks over in the back corner of the elevator and he goes, "Dave, is that you?" And my husband David went, "Hey, Jimmy, how are you?" And they had this little chat, and everybody went, "Oh my goodness." And my husband comes home, and my husband's just a down-to-earth kind of person who doesn't think of anybody any differently than anybody else. And he's telling me this story, and I said, "You're not going to get the job." "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Because the people you would work for would be intimidated that you're friends with their big boss." And sure enough, it didn't happen, but it was okay because he got a better job later. But it was kind of funny. So that's a little snippet of our career history. So stay tuned because my next video is going to be more about how you can have a successful interview.